All right. 10 of the head is back. As always, the Devil's Cut is leading us in. Love that band. Straight out of Lansing, Michigan. If you're anywhere on the East Coast, make sure you're checking them out. Today, though, 10 of the Head, hosted by Nick Faber with a very special guest, fantasy football contributor for FFD 260, MLB writer for Roto Den, Kyle Richardson. Kyle, good to have you on, bud.
Thanks. I appreciate being on.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Today, 10 in the head, we got 10 questions as always, and we're sticking with the quarterbacks of the NFL. We got questions about the rookies, we got questions about the sophomores, we got questions about the top boys. So pay attention, get your pen, get your paper, and take some notes. 10 in the head, let's get this going. So today, question number one, pretty hard question or easy question, depends on how you look at it. Who's the best quarterback to take in the 2017 season? And as easy as it would be to say Aaron Rodgers here, I'm gonna dip past Rodgers. I don't even have him number one on my rankings because I have Tom, the perfect man, Brady number one. I think the addition of Cooks. I mean, he's a talented pass catcher who has the potential to be one of the best receivers that Brady's had since Moss. In no comparison of the two, but I think that he could be the best fantasy receiver since Moss. He has hands, he can catch everything that comes to him. I'm loving Brandon Cooks in New England. Gronk is back, seems to be healthy, playing this year. Hopefully, if we can get 16 games out of him, all that's just going to add to Brady's numbers. Gillisley is more elusive and he can catch the ball. They always have White. They always have Lewis. It seems like if they make the cut, but I mean, as just as I'm sitting here looking at the team that Brady has, the plethora of weapons is just too much for Brady not to post the top quarterback stats in the league. Kyle, what do you got to say?
Well, I got to agree with you on everything you said about Tom Brady and the Patriots. They are going to be in for one special season. And I'm going to have to take the easy route here, and I'm going to have to say Aaron Rodgers, just because he's been so consistent for so many years now. And I think he probably has the best offensive team around him that he's ever had, in my opinion. You know, who seems to be coming into his own. He's got the reliable Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb being 100% healthy this year, hopefully, is going to having those top three receivers. He's added Martellus Bennett. And I'm a huge Ty Montgomery fan this year. So what could be one of his most explosive running backs as well is just going to tip everything in his favor. So like I said, I am going to have to take the easy route. I definitely think Aaron Rodgers has a chance to be the best quarterback, best fantasy quarterback of 2017.
Yeah, I mean Aaron Rodgers is just unbelievable, and his team does seem very supportive. I mean, especially with the addition of Bennett, and like you said, Montgomery's a great pass catching running back. Could get him a lot of lazy points. Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, they're going to be battling out all year. It's going to be fun to see. So now let's run on to question two, though. And this one we go from the veterans, the best of the best, to the complete opposite. And we're not talking redraft league here, which we normally do on 10 Head. Let's change this topic to dynasty leagues. So you're in a dynasty league. What rookie quarterback are you drafting first in a dynasty league? For me, I have to say Deshaun Watson. Now, not only does he have the best chance to provide fantasy stats this year, but the question doesn't just talk about this year. I think he has the best potential to have the best fantasy stats throughout the rest of his career. He works under one of the best quarterback minds in the world in Bill O'Brien. He has a young, established weapon in DeAndre Hopkins. And in comparison, Tyreek Hill is with Mahomes, but Hill isn't experienced, isn't established. He had a great end of last year. Meredith with Trubisky. I'm not buying Meredith as a fantasy wide receiver stud for the rest of his career. But Hopkins, it's hard not to think that he is just going to be one of the top 10, top 15 wide receivers until Father Time beats him down. So I like that for Deshaun Watson. I'm just not going to join the Mitch hype train this year at all. I'm not buying Chicago. I'm not buying Trubisky. I actually like Mike Glennon a lot, and I don't see Mitch getting a lot of playing time. I did have Mahomes ranked as my favorite quarterback coming out of the year, and I think he can win. And I think he can win a lot with Reed in Kansas City, but as much as I do like Pat, I just it's hard for me not to think with Watson's winning mentality in Houston with a surrounding cast that he has and a solid defense that he has that he's not going to shine for years to come. Kyle?
Yeah, Deshaun Watson is a guy that I really liked coming out as well, and a buddy of mine debated with me for quite some time whether it was Trubisky or Watson. And I said, I think Watson's going to become one of those reliable guys that's going to be a little bit better than Alex Smith, but be more of those driver type quarterbacks that doesn't light people on fire and is in a stats guy, but he's going to be a winner because he has that pedigree and he has those intangibles. And that's why I really like him. From a fantasy standpoint, though, I definitely think Patrick Mahomes is going to be that guy that is going to give you those extra points. He's going to be like Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, where he's going to give you a little bit extra. I think he's very dynamic. I think he can move a little bit. Andy Reid, I think, is going to have a great game plan for him. I'm not sold on Tyreek Hill being a wide receiver one, but by the time Patrick Mahomes becomes the starter in KC, I don't think it's going to be this year, but by the time he does, maybe he does add a couple of more weapons. I like Kareem Hunt a lot. He's got Travis Kelce. Maybe Hill does become a little bit better. I really like their draft pick of Richardson this year. I think things are setting up well for him to really be one of those top tier fantasy quarterbacks in the next maybe 2 to 3 years.
I can definitely see that. And reports coming out of camp early so far is his arm is just, he's got a rocket. He's got a rocket for an arm, and that is very helpful in the NFL. You need to be able to get the ball out fast. You need to be able to get it downfield. So I do love Pat Mahomes. I love that pick. It looks like Watson for me, Mahomes for Kyle, and that's who you're taking in your dynasty leagues for rookies. So going from rookies to maybe rookie of the year. I can't remember, but I think he was. Let's talk Cam Newton. Is Cam Newton bouncing back in 2017? In 2015, he was the best quarterback in fantasy football. 2016, he regressed. He just wasn't who we wanted him to be. He was drafted early in a lot of leagues, and he just didn't really show the talent that we wanted, that we saw in 2015. Now, is he going to bounce back in 2017? In my opinion, no. I'm not buying it. I mean, as good as Kelvin Benjamin is, Greg Olsen is, Christian McCaffrey could be, this may not be the best year for Cam because it seems like they're trying to move their offense toward Christian McCaffrey. And that's going to take a year or two to really put yourself into kind of a new offensive scheme. I don't think they're going to change everything, obviously, but there's going to be a little bit of difference. And that might be tough for Cam to, I guess, digest. So to me, I'm just not seeing him to be anything more than a top 17, 18 quarterback. So another reason why I don't like Cam too is the defense seemed to really put Cam in an odd situation last year by not being able to be as good as they were in 2015. With the loss of Josh Norman, you could tell that Carolina took a hit on defense. And the best offense is a good defense. I don't think they did enough to improve that defense. I think Cam's going to still have it on his mind that he's got to win this game. And I mean, I do like Curtis Samuel as a late round flyer, but I'm just not high on McCaffrey. I'm not high on Cam this year. So spare me on Cam. Kyle, what do you got to say?
Yeah, no, we're definitely in agreement on this one. I think the days of Cam Newton being a top 10 fantasy quarterback are done. A lot of his value and a lot of the reason that people drafted him was because he had the opportunity to gain those extra points with rushing yards and with rushing touchdowns. And the Panthers have been vocal about taking that away from him and wanting him to be more of a traditional in the pocket quarterback. And I don't know if Cam Newton can do that or not because I don't think I've ever seen it. I do like the weapons around him. He's got terrific weapons around him. McCaffrey, I think, is going to be very good. Greg Olsen, like you mentioned, and Kelvin Benjamin, and even Curtis Samuel. I think he's got some great weapons around him, but he's going in a lot of drafts and a lot of auctions I'm seeing. He's one of the first 5 quarterbacks off the board. I'm not willing to pay that kind of a price and use that kind of a draft pick on him. I don't think he bounces back. I think it's going to be another tough year for him. It's sad to see how quickly someone can fall from being number one to outside the top 10. But unfortunately, I think that's what we're looking at with him.
We're gonna be getting to rushing quarterbacks too in a couple questions here, but I definitely agree that Carolina just said that they didn't want Cam to be hit as much as he was. And last year, I believe I read a stat earlier this year that don't quote me on this, but that he got hit more than any quarterback, like multiple times more than the second leading quarterback. He just takes hits, and that's not what Carolina wants. They want him as their franchise quarterback, so they're gonna put him in the pocket and see if he produces. And years of watching football, it rarely works out. So I'm just not buying Cam. It doesn't seem like Kyle is either. Both in agreement. So from Cam Newton to Jared Goff, let's talk about number one drafted quarterbacks. Will Goff be a fantasy relevant quarterback this year? No, not in my opinion. Sean McVay will add a flair type offense instead of Fisher's lack of offense. And I like that. Tavon Austin is a playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands, but they decided to not keep Britt and bring in Robert Woods, who in my opinion is not up to Kenny Britt's caliber. And I'm not saying Kenny Britt is amazing, but I'm not saying that I'm saying that Woods is not up to his caliber. I do like Cooper Kupp a lot, and I think Goff can actually make a very good wide receiver out of Kupp. But all of this added up just still doesn't even put me having Goff anywhere near top 25 quarterbacks. They're gonna run with Gurley. Gurley is still their bell cow. He may not have performed as we all wanted him to last year. He may have missed a couple holes when he shouldn't have, but they're not going to shy away from him. They're going to give him the ball, and that could help Goff. A lot of times, a good running game can help your passing game, obviously, but you need a good passing game to establish a good running game. It's a vicious cycle, and I don't think Goff is going to come into fruition this year. I'm not saying that Goff will be bad for his whole career, but this year, do I think he'll be fantasy relevant? No, not in my mind. Kyle?
Yeah, I don't. I remember before the 2016 draft, I'm sitting in my office at work, and the news broke that the Rams had traded to move up and get Goff. And I immediately went across the hall to my coworker, and I was like, "This will be the biggest mistake in Rams history." I didn't like Goff coming out of college. I thought it was a mistake for him to be the first quarterback taken. I thought it was a mistake for the Rams to move up and get him. I don't see him being fantasy relevant. I don't even know if I see him being really NFL relevant moving forward. He's definitely going to get a shot in LA. I don't know if he's ever going to succeed. I think with a new coaching staff and a new regime there, that he may not get to that point, that they might bail on him before they get to that. So I don't see him being fantasy relevant. I'm not a fan of the weapons that he has around him except for Gurley, but Gurley's not going to be able to do it himself, and Goff's not going to be good enough to take the pressure off Gurley.
So it seems like we're in agreement. Jared Goff just shouldn't really be on your fantasy radar this year. Maybe in years to come. I do agree with Kyle, though. I think the Rams really made a mistake trying to get Goff, but who am I to say? Stafford wasn't great his first year as a Lions quarterback, so maybe Goff just needs time to get some teammates around him that will really make him succeed. All right. So question 5, getting halfway through here. What quarterback leads the position group in rushing yards? I liked this question. It's kind of fun. I mean, it seems like the obvious answer you would say would be Tyrod Taylor. And if that's who you say, Kyle, that's a good answer. But me, I'm going to be a little different. And I'm going to go with the leading quarterback rusher of 3 years ago, the third highest quarterback rusher 2 years ago, and then someone who got injured last year, and you could see with his knees not really being able to run as well as he wanted, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's offensive line hasn't really improved. And so that to me means that he's going to be on the move a lot. And he's great at scrambling. Baldwin is great at scrambling with him and getting open. But Russell Wilson's going to be out of the pocket a lot more than we hope, which means that he's going to be finding holes in that defense with his legs just as much as I think he was 2-3 years ago. He's going to be a very healthy Russell Wilson, knock on wood. And if so, I can see at least 115 rushes from him, maybe 100 rushes from him, which would put him in top consideration with Tyrod, maybe Cam. It's always fun to see Bortles and Rodgers up there, but I don't think they'll lead the league in quarterback rushing yards. So give me Russ Wilson. Kyle, who you got?
I'm going to have to flake out here and take the easy answer, the popular here, because yep, I think Russell Wilson. I think the different and I'm going to keep him as healthy as possible and try to keep him a little bit more in the pocket. Cam Newton, obviously, we talked about that already. Colin Kaepernick's not even in the league right now. So he's not going to see scrambling around. But I think Tyrod Taylor is the most sensible answer as far as looking through guys who have had good rushing yards over the last couple of years. And I wrote a hot takes article actually for FF Dynasty 260 a couple weeks ago. And in my article, I said that I felt that Tyrod Taylor was going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this season. He's got really good weapons around him. We're keeping our fingers crossed that Sammy Watkins is healthy for what seems like the first time in forever. He's got a new offensive scheme where they've said that they're going to pass the ball a little bit more, and if they do that, maybe it does help open up some runs for him. He had 580 yards on the ground last year, and I expect him to either match that or eclipse that.
Right on. So Tyrod for Kyle, Russ for Nick. We'll come back at the end of the year. We'll see how that turns out. Now let's go on to the, as always, questions for 10 in the head. Number 6, as always, biggest bust of 2017. This we're talking only quarterbacks. And I'll lead us off by saying 2 people that I think will be big busts, and then I'll narrow that down to my top answer. For me, by the way, my bust, Matt Ryan, Derek Carr. I don't like either of them this year. I'm not buying in on either of them. And basically, out of Ryan and Carr, I'm going to say that Matt Ryan's going to be the biggest bust in comparison to where we're drafting Matt Ryan and Derek Carr and where I see them finishing at the end of the season. So the reason I don't like Matt Ryan is they lost, in my opinion, one of the biggest playmakers in Atlanta's offense. One of the reasons why they made it to the playoffs and to the Super Bowl, and Kyle Shanahan. And he may not be on the field, but the way he played or called games was phenomenal and imperative to Matt Ryan's success and the Falcons' success. I don't think the Falcons will drop off the map because they got rid of him or because he left, but I do see Matt Ryan just taking a little step back to where his stats were averaging out his first 8 years of his career. I'm not gonna think I don't know why I would think that Matt Ryan had his career year in every passing stat pretty much known to man, and he's just gonna outperform that or continue to hit those numbers. I don't see that in any way. I think his yards will be up high like they always are. His touchdowns will take a step back. His interceptions will go back up to where they were by 5 or 6. And just in my opinion, he'll end up dropping back into the latter half of the QB1s, maybe the early of the QB2s. And you're drafting him right now so early as the 4th or 5th quarterback off the board. Spare me on Matt Ryan. I'm going to avoid him, and I'll be trying to take a quarterback later on in the draft. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I really like your Matt Ryan pick because I agree with everything that you said. Since we already talked about Cam Newton, I'm not going to pick him as my bust, but I also had 2 that I really think could end up causing some issues this year, and I'm going Dak Prescott and Andrew Luck. With Prescott, I think the hype train is still a little too fast forward with what he did last year. With a looming suspension for Zeke, I think they're going to need to rely on him a little bit more even when Zeke gets suspension. And I want to see what he does. And I'm not willing to pay the current price on him based on a what if. We'll wait and see what happens with that. He could completely prove me wrong, and he could put up another season like he did last year, and I'll tip my cap and say this guy's good to go. But until then, I got to give it some time. With Andrew Luck, I mean, he literally just started throwing after his surgery in the offseason. So he's got to get that arm back in shape. He's got to get back with his teammates and his receivers and his tight ends. If he gets a late start to camp or even the season, he's going as a top 3 quarterback right now. Definitely in fantasy, even in redrafts, he seems to be going very high. If he just gets a late start to the season and has more shoulder issues, I think you're just in for another year of wondering, is Andrew Luck going to turn out to be the best QB ever, or is he going to kind of put up the stats that he has been?
Those are great picks. I definitely agree with both of them. Prescott, I mean, he's down two offensive linemen from last year. His defense, in my opinion, is going to be not as good as last year, which really kept the Cowboys in the game. Andrew Luck, I've tried so hard this whole offseason not to worry about him not throwing, but we are now starting training camp and he's just now throwing his first balls of the year. That gets scary. And we've all seen it. Luck just could be the best, and he just might not even play all season, pretty much. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Great picks, Kyle. So let's go from the biggest bust to our next, as always, question. And as always, on 10 of the head, question number 7, our bold prediction. Again, only quarterback style. For me, my bold prediction kind of highlights the two people that we just talked about, Matt Ryan and Andrew Luck. My bold prediction is that Philip Rivers has a better fantasy season than Andrew Luck and Matt Ryan. Philip Rivers just is the most underrated quarterback this year, and his weapons are unbelievable if they can stay healthy. Knock on wood. Obviously, we assume Keenan Allen will go down at some point in this season. Mike Williams already dealing with a little bit of injuries, but Tyrell Williams is still a stud. Hunter Henry is just broke out last year, and I expect way better numbers from him last year, as we talked about in 10 on the Head last episode. Melvin Gordon gives him the lazy quarterback points that I absolutely love. Dip it off to Gordon and let him run. Let him do his thing. Ryan, I said all the reasons why I don't like him this year. Luck, Kyle said all the reasons why we're not liking him this year. So at that point, if they aren't going to be 4-5, but they're drafted as 4-5, someone's going to have to take their place. Someone under the 5th spot. And that could be Jameis Winston. It could be Kirk Cousins. It could be all these guys. But to be a little bold, why don't we say Philip Rivers as the top 5 quarterback of the season, outperforms Luck, outperforms Ryan, and has a solid year for the Los Angeles Chargers? Kyle?
So my bold prediction, I'm also going to take a piece from my hot takes article on FF Dynasty 260 a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to say Matt Stafford is the number 1 overall fantasy quarterback at the end of the year.
We can end this episode right now, and you'll just be my best friend. That is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Go on, tell me why. Tell me why he's going to be the best quarterback in fantasy.
Oh man, I own Stafford on almost every single one of my fantasy teams, so I also hope this comes true. But reading a lot of things about Stafford, they've been saying, the offensive line has been retooled. Amir Abdullah is going to be back and he's going to be healthy. They talked to basically at the end of the last season when his hand was hurt and he wasn't able to get those touchdowns up and all these different things people talk about. And I'm going to turn the tables back on him. I think he's going to be the best because he has a better offensive line, because he has Amir Abdullah. He's healthy now. I think Marvin Jones bounces back, and I think he's a wide receiver too this year. I think Golden Tate's his own reliable self. Eric Ebron, he's going to step up and be what they drafted him to be. Couple all of that and mix it in with the fact that the Lions are going to play one of the hardest schedules in the NFL this year, in my opinion. They're going to be playing from behind an awful lot. And I read the other day that they're going to try and give Abdullah 200 touches this year. It's not going to happen because they're going to have to be throwing it all year long to keep up with all their opponents. I definitely think he has a chance, just based on the amount of volume we're going to see from him, to put up those numbers to give you that quarterback 1, that overall number 1 ranking for quarterbacks this year.
I love it. I mean, we all know Jim Bob Cooter loves to throw the ball. We know that Detroit loves to throw the ball. Stafford is, I don't know what the averages are, but if you look at Matt Stafford's career and all the quarterbacks that have thrown the ball in that career, I would be shocked if anyone has thrown the ball more times than Matt Stafford. They got Theo Riddick, who's a phenomenal pass-catching running back, alongside of Abdullah, which in no way will he touch 200 touches or carries. But he's also a good pass-catching running back, and he'll get his chances. Kenny Galladay is lighting up reports this entire offseason, whether it was OTAs or early signs of training camp. Everything seems to be great for him. The loss of Bolden, in my opinion, is not going to affect Matt Stafford or the Lions. If anything, it just will improve because they'll give you more chances for TJ Jones, Kenny Galladay. Marvin Jones, who I have as a big sleeper. I've mentioned him many times on 10 of the Head. So I love the pick, Kyle. Don't get me talking about Matt Stafford of the Lions because we won't end the show. Great pick. Let's get moving on. So moving on. We're going to question 8, question 9, and as always, both of them are our toss-ups. And for me, or well, for me, let's actually read the question before we get into my answer here. Number eight's toss up is a three-way battle. Blake Bortles, Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill. And I'm not gonna lie, I put this question here and I designed it specifically for me to talk and tell everyone why they need to be reaching, or maybe not reaching, but getting Blake Bortles. And then he threw four interceptions in his first practice, maybe second practice, and now I'm debating between Flacco and Tannehill. So Flacco's out, or well, he might be back by week one. We don't know exactly, but still it's kind of risky that he's a little injured. I'm just not going to buy Flacco, especially with the Dixon injury. The who is it? Urschel, I believe, just retired from his offensive line. Just a lot of things happening in Baltimore where I'm just not buying Flacco this year. So give me Ryan Tannehill, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, who's about to be a stud, a blowout big wide receiver two in his third year, which is the year that they always, well, not always, but most of the time hit their stride. Jarvis Landry is always PPR machine. Jay Ajayi wants to be more involved in passing, and he is just a good runner, as we saw last year. Everything kind of leads me to say Tannehill's not going to be a bad quarterback drafted as late as he's being drafted. If his offensive line stays healthy and his defense stays where they were last year when they made their playoff push, I'm loving Ryan Tannehill, and he just never gets the respect. Last year, 2 years ago, we were drafting him a little earlier, and we wanted him to be a phenomenal quarterback, and he just kind of stayed mediocre, and that kind of dropped everyone's thought back process on him back a little bit, thinking, oh, okay, so Tannehill's just a mediocre at best quarterback. That's the ceiling he has, but maybe not. But maybe not. If Tannehill gets all stars aligned this year, watch out for him to be a quarterback one, a top 12 quarterback, in my opinion. So that's me. I'm taking Ryan Tannehill. Kyle?
Yeah, I was going Joe Flacco on this question easily until the reports came out about his back. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be nearly as serious as they originally thought. I do think he's going to be playing in week one. But I think Tannehill is also a very close second. Bortles, I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole. After those reports of the 5 interceptions the other day, I think things are just getting worse. And then obviously the reports today of their left tackle retiring. I mean, things in Jacksonville just can't get any more crazier than what they are right now. So I'm not going Bortles. I'm going to go Flacco. I like the addition of Jeremy Maclin. Mike Wallace has been very consistent the last few years. I was super excited for Kenneth Dixon this year, and now he's hurt. So I think Ryan Tannehill's pulled a little bit closer for me. I do like the weapons that are around him. I'm not a J.I.J. fan, but I love Jarvis Landry. I hear obviously the talk of Devontae Parker breaking out this year. I think Kenny Stills is very underrated. So I think it's Flacco by a hair right now for me.
Flacco for Kyle, Tannehill for me. I was all on Ken Dixon too. I even wrote an article highlighting he's going to be a great sophomore player. Watch out for him. He's going to come in pass catching, and then obviously he did go down. But I do like the pick. Flacco and Tannehill seem to be right there. It'll be fun to see who finishes above the other at the end of the year. So let's keep with our toss-ups. We're on question 9. 2 more to go. Derek Carr or Russell Wilson? For me, easily said in our previous questions, Derek Carr is going to be a bust for me. I don't like how everyone's buying in on him. I just found him to be a little bit too inconsistent as fantasy points. I don't think Lynch is going to be healthy all year, meaning I think the rushing game might take a step back. I do like Jalen Richard as a sleeper, but I just don't think everything's going to be there for Carr. He's got a target on his back, which is never good. So give me Russell Wilson. Give me the guy that is kind of starting to slip away from everyone's mind because he didn't do great last year. And as we all know, NFL and fantasy football is what have you done for me lately? And Russell Wilson didn't do specifically what he was supposed to do last year, so he's dropped down in the ADP. He's still being drafted pretty high, and I have no problem taking Russell Wilson if the top 5 quarterbacks are off the board. I'm looking at Carr, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Kirk Cousins, Marcus Mariota, all those quarterbacks lined up next to each other. I'll take Russell Wilson over them all any day. Kind of based on my prediction of him being the top rushing quarterback in the league. Give me Russell Wilson to get me 5, 6, 7 touchdowns on the ground. He's got CJ Prosise, who's a great pass-catching running back, who can easily help Wilson out in any dump-offs and get him some extra lazy yards. So For me, I'm loving Russ Wilson over Derek Carr. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, I think if it's a dynasty league, I think I'm taking Carr over Russell Wilson at this point. But if we're talking specifically about 2017, I have to agree that I'm going Russell Wilson again. Um, he's just been too good for too long for me to give that up. And I like, especially in like a redraft type league, I like consistency. I like knowing what I'm going to get. In a dynasty league, maybe I can go a little bit back and forth and maybe sacrifice maybe some 2017 numbers to know I'm getting the better longer term value. But I definitely like Russell Wilson. I don't think he's going to get you as many rushing yards as what he has been, but I still think he's going to give you those little extra points here and there. And I love players who are going to give you those extra points, running backs who are going to break some tackles, or wide receivers who are going to get yards after the catch. Running backs who can get me some extra points here and there with their rushing ability are excellent for that. I think the passing game, Doug Baldwin has been super consistent lately the last couple of years. You know, Jimmy Graham, it seems like the longer him and Russell Wilson are together, the better they get. They do have three running backs there that I really like. I think Procise is going to be really good. I was all on the Rawls train last year before he got hurt. You saw, and Eddie Lacy, I don't know what we're going to get with him, but obviously he was really good in Green Bay. So I think Russell Wilson in 2017 is going to give you better numbers.
All right, Kyle and I in agreement. Russell Wilson, if you're sitting in the spot to draft Derek Carr or Russell Wilson, we would advise go Russell Wilson. All right, so 10 in the head unfortunately has hit its 10th and final question. It's been a great show, and we got one more thing to talk about. As always, our late round flyers, specifically today, quarterbacks. And I've been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, you should be targeting Carson Palmer as a late round flyer. I love what he's going to do this year, but because I've talked about him pretty much on every episode that I've ever done in 10 in the head, I'm gonna change it up. I just had to throw my Carson Palmer plug in there somewhere. I'm gonna switch it up, and I'm gonna go with San Francisco's new quarterback Brian Hoyer. I think Brian Hoyer has a chance with Pierre Garcon, Kyle Shanahan, with Goodwin looking great, or Godwin looking great, Curley still there, Hyde, the rookie, Joe Williams. Everything kind of seems that Brian Hoyer might be a sneaky quarterback play. He started 4 games and finished 4 games in Chicago last year. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 300 plus yards in every single game. He left Cleveland with a winning record. That alone should be an eye opener. He made Hopkins a viable wide receiver in Houston. He played well in Houston until that playoff game, which we just don't even need to talk about. Maybe it's the Michigan State love in me, but I'm loving Brian Hoyer this year. I've been saying Garcon has the chance to be a number one wide receiver in fantasy football. Hoyer has a chance to be a top 15 quarterback if he stays healthy and plays all year. It's a big if, but if he does, I'm loving Brian Hoyer, and you should too. Kyle, what do you got?
Yeah, I've got Brian Hoyer written down here, so I definitely agree with you there. And out of all the players that you mentioned there in San Francisco, I think Tim Hightower has a chance to be an X factor for him. But we're not talking running back, so I'll leave that for a different episode. But Josh McCown is another quarterback that I got. He's going to be starting in New York. I don't think Christian Hackenberg touches the field this year, so I'm not worried about him starting at any point in time. But a couple of things that I've talked about in articles this year is the chemistry I think Josh McCown and Quincy and Nunwa are going to have. Josh McCown has put up some excellent numbers when it comes to the deep ball, and Quincy Nunwa was one of the best deep ball catching wide receivers last year. So I think just the chemistry and the fact that they're going to be playing from behind a lot. If you're in a super flex league and a 2 QB league, I think guys like Brian Hoyer and Josh McCown, if you decide to grab one quarterback early and then wait it out and let everybody go for the other quarterbacks and then wait to get these guys, I think they're going to offer excellent value for you. If you're just in a standard league where you start one quarterback, I think these are definitely guys that you grab and you stick on your bench. They're going to be good bye week flyers. They're going to be good guys in case of injury. Maybe your quarterback's facing a tough defense. You plug one of these guys in. I think they're going to give you excellent numbers this year.
I love the Josh McCown pick. In our last episode, 10 in the head, we did a tight end episode, and my late round flyer there was Austin Safarian Jenkins because I like that McCown is at quarterback for New York. I think he's going to add a big element. He's a good quarterback. He knows how to throw the ball. He knows how to play the game. He loves his tight ends, which is why I got on about ASJ. But you're right. If him and Anunwa can create this chemistry, then they have the chance to be breakout stars, both of them. So I love that pick. Hoyer for me, McCown for Kyle. So thank you for listening. 10 in the head. It's been a great episode. I was ecstatic when Kyle said he'd join me. So, Kyle, let me help you. Where do people go to find you at?
Yeah, I'm super active on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, find me at krich1532. My articles are up on FF Dynasty 260. So check me out there as well. I'm doing a little MLB writing as well for Roto Den. So just find me on Twitter. I'm super active when it comes to messages. So if you've got questions for me, send them my way. I'll answer them for you. And I'm ecstatic to get here into the season soon so I can start doing some
That's what I'm saying.
stuff.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm ready for this season to begin. Hall of Fame game coming up Thursday. I cannot wait. If you're not following Kyle, you better. I do, and he is very fun to read about what he has to say. If you're trying to follow 10 in the Head, we're on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. We're on Facebook, 10 in the Head. Click the see first so you can make sure you don't miss a moment of this phenomenal podcasting. Make sure you go on Twitter. You can find 10 on the Heads page on my personal page at Nick Faber 1229. Again, that's Nick Faber 1229. We are on SoundCloud now. We're moving up in the world. iTunes is coming. Stitchers is coming. Make sure you follow 10 in the Head. It's been a great show. Kyle Richardson, it's been great having you on. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. Have a great day.